I suppose you're programmed for etiquette and protocol.
I take orders from just one person, me.
You think you know Star Wars. You've quoted every line, hummed the binary sunset, memorized the crawl, but the version in your mind, that's the polished myth. The truth, the raw, awkward, human truth, is far weirder. Before Han Solo was a heartthrob, he was a green fish man. Before C-3PO was a neurotic droid, he was a gold-plated sweat trap, baking a British actor alive. And before the galaxy felt far, far away, it was stitched together with elephant costumes, Scottish accented gangsters, and professors coding battle animations on ancient computers. This isn't the making-of documentary you've seen. This is the stuff they don't teach in Jedi training. 11 facts that crack the lightsaber glow wide open and show you the glorious, bizarre, often absurd guts of a movie that almost didn't exist. You're not just revisiting A New Hope. You're slipping into the weird timeline beneath it. The one where slippers rule empires and Han shoots first. And just before we dive in, I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers as a small channel. If you'd like to help me keep digging into the strange side of cinema, consider hitting that subscribe button. It truly means a lot. 11 bizarre facts about Star Wars you didn't know. 1. Han Solo was originally a giant green fish man before Harrison Ford ever cocked an eyebrow. As Han Solo, George Lucas had a wildly different smuggler in mind, one who didn't even breathe air. In the earliest drafts of the Star Wars script, Han Solo was a giant, gilled, green-skinned alien with fish-like features and no clear human anatomy. Concept art even shows him with webbed hands, fins, and reptilian eyes. He was described as an amphibian-like creature from Corellia, and bore zero resemblance to the lovable rogue we now associate with the Millennium Falcon. This version was Lucas at his most experimental, constructing a galaxy so alien it defied relatability. But as the script evolved, so did Han. Lucas slowly chipped away the exotic edges, reshaping Han into a human, a counterbalance to Luke's earnestness. The change wasn't just cosmetic, it grounded the character, making him more charming, sarcastic, and dangerous. And casting Ford sealed the deal. Still, imagine a world where Han grunted instead of quipped, flopped instead of strode, and maybe even breathed through gills. That alternate Solo exists only in dusty storyboards, and in the unmade version of Star Wars where weirdness almost won. 2. Luke Skywalker was once Starkiller, and Leia was Princess Zara. Before the twin sons of Tatooine ever rose on Luke Skywalker, he was Luke Starkiller. Yes, Starkiller, a name that sounded less like a dreamy desert farm boy and more like a supervillain who moonlights as a heavy metal bassist. In Lucas's earliest scripts, the Force was known as the Force of Others, and the Jedi were not noble monks, but spacefaring warriors called Dai Nogas. Princess Leia, she was Princess Zara. No side buns, no sharp tongue, just a vaguely defined royal archetype. Lucas drafted version after version, blending samurai cinema, pulp sci-fi, and post-Vietnam cynicism into a dense narrative stew. But Starkiller, despite his flashy name, lacked emotional pull. Eventually, Lucas softened him into Luke Skywalker, making him more of a stand-in for the audience. Idealistic, uncertain, and entirely human, the name Starkiller would return decades later in the Force Unleashed video game series. But in 1977, it was shelved in favor of something warmer, more hopeful. The Force had a new face, and the galaxy had a reluctant hero it could believe in. 3. The original Death Star plans were a university science project, that iconic wireframe of the Death Star trench run, rotating, blinking, gridded, feels like retro CGI perfection. But here's the twist, it wasn't created by Hollywood, but by academics using early scientific computers. The animation was built by computer scientist Larry Cuba, working with Tom DeFanti at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Cuba used a revolutionary programming language called GRASS, Graphic Symbiosis System, to code the motion graphics on a PDP-11 minicomputer, not some studio rendering farm. The footage was then filmed directly from a monitor, a technique that lent the images their signature flicker and grain. In essence, the rebellion's greatest tactical visualization, the Death Star approach, was born in a university lab, not on a film set. It was Lucas's vision filtered through academia, and it helped give Star Wars a level of visual sophistication most sci-fi of the time couldn't dream of. That wireframe wasn't just cool looking, it was a triumph of outsider tech and creative problem solving. It proved that in 1977, cinematic revolution didn't need millions. It just needed a few brilliant nerds and a camera pointed at a screen. 4. Peter Cushing filmed all his scenes wearing slippers. Grand Moff Tarkin, the stern skeletal architect of planetary genocide, had a secret. Beneath his militaristic imperial uniform, beneath the scowl and the scathing dialogue, he was wearing bedroom slippers. Peter Cushing, the classically trained British actor portraying Tarkin, had delicate feet and found the stiff leather boots provided by wardrobe unbearably painful. Rather than suffer through hours of shooting and discomfort, he politely asked if he could wear slippers instead. Lucas, who cared more about getting the shot than enforcing boot regulations, agreed. As a result, Cushing performed every single one of his scenes with warm, fuzzy footwear hidden just out of frame. The camera never pans low, and for good reason. Tarkin's intimidating march is actually a careful slipper shuffle. It's a delicious contradiction. The cold, commanding face of the Empire conducted mass murder while his toes stayed cozy. That's the secret texture of Star Wars. Behind every mask, robe, or blaster is a human actor enduring practical absurdities. And sometimes that means saving the galaxy in soft, silent steps. 5. Banthas were played by a disguised elephant named Margie. Those shaggy horned beasts lumbering across the dunes of Tatooine. They're Banthas, of course, icons of desert survival and Tusken Raider intimidation. But what you're actually seeing under all that fur is a 22-year-old female Asian elephant named Margie. Draped in 300 pounds of shaggy synthetic wool and rubber horns, Margie was coaxed across California's scorching Death Valley in full costume. The shoot was a logistical nightmare. She hated the headpiece, often tossing it off mid-take, and the extreme heat made her restless. At one point, the production had to halt while she stomped the props in frustration. The handlers did what they could. Banthas needed to exist, and CGI wasn't even a rumor yet. Her footage appears mostly in wide shots, trudging in the background, a living special effect surrounded by movie magic. It's fitting that Star Wars, a story about beasts and machines, leaned on real-life nature to fill in the gaps. And Margie, she didn't just play a bantha, she became one. Her quiet, trudging dignity helped ground an alien world in something tactile and real. Sometimes, the galaxy's most alien creatures are just Earth animals in very patient disguise. 6. Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill performed their own swing stunt in the Death Star's chasm-crossing scene, where Luke and Leia grapple and swing across a yawning shaft. You might assume it was a job for stunt doubles. After all, it looks dangerous, theatrical, maybe even impossible to pull off in a single take. But nope, that's Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill in costume, harnessed up, and swinging for real. No stand-ins, no second unit. Just the two young stars dangling from wires and trusting the physics of a rapidly rigged pulley system. The scene was shot in one go, with no retakes. Why? Because the budget wouldn't allow it. In 1977, Star Wars was still a gamble, not a sure thing. Every setup cost money. So when Lucas asked them to leap off that ledge, literally, they did it themselves. What's even more impressive is how natural they make it look. Leia kisses Luke on the cheek, Luke glances back, and then they fly. In one moment, a princess and a farm boy become legends. That swing, it wasn't just a stunt. It was pure cinematic trust and a hint of the swashbuckling spirit that Star Wars would etch into pop culture forever. 7. The opening crawl was inspired by Flash Gordon, then rewritten by Brian De Palma. That iconic yellow crawl, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, didn't emerge from a void. It was lifted almost directly from the 1930s Flash Gordon serials George Lucas worshipped as a kid. Those black and white space adventures opened with dramatic exposition, scrolling away into the distance while bombastic music blared. Lucas adored the format, but early drafts of his crawl were, well, unreadable. Paragraphs of lore, names, jargon, dense even for fans of Dune. Friends who read it were baffled. One of them was fellow filmmaker Brian De Palma, Carrie Scarface, who reportedly laughed out loud at the first version. But instead of just mocking it, De Palma rolled up his sleeves and helped rewrite the entire prologue, making it snappier, clearer, and emotionally compelling. The final crawl, with its clean lines and mythic scale, was a collaboration born from frustration and love. It's now one of the most recognizable text sequences in film history, and it started with a fanboy homage, saved by a friend who knew how to cut the fat and let the Force do the rest. 8. C-3PO's eyes were made of real gold and nearly roasted. Anthony Daniels alive. There's a reason C-3PO's eyes glint so strangely on screen. They were crafted with real gold plating, not for glamour, but to prevent corrosion from sweat, heat, and sand. Inside the golden shell was actor Anthony Daniels, who endured hours locked inside the rigid, barely ventilated suit. During desert shoots in Tunisia, temperatures soared past 100 degrees Fahrenheit by day and dropped to near freezing at night. The metal limbs chafed, pinched, and restricted movement so severely that Daniels once blacked out on set. The helmet was worse. It distorted his vision and made it nearly impossible to hear cues. Daniels could only see through tiny pinholes, and since the head wasn't removable without tools, he was often trapped inside for hours. The production team even forgot he was in there once, breaking for lunch while he stood alone in his gilded prison. And yet, his stiff, awkward gait, that wasn't acting. It was necessity. Daniels embodied a droid because he literally moved like one. C-3PO became the galaxy's most uptight robot, not through design, but through pure human discomfort, wrapped in actual gold. 9. Han shot first. Wasn't a debate in 1977. It was a fact before internet forums ignited, before special editions altered frames, and before fans dissected scenes with forensic scrutiny. There was only one truth in 1977. Han Solo shot first. In the smoky cantina on Tatooine, Greedo draws, talks tough, and then bam! Han shoots him mid-sentence. No warning shot, no hesitation. It was quick, cold, and perfect. The original script reads plainly, Han shoots the alien. Full stop. There's no return fire, no simultaneous trigger pull, no moral ambiguity. It established Han not as a hero, but as a scoundrel who survived because he acted fast. Then came the 1997 special edition, where George Lucas digitally altered the scene to make Greedo shoot first, justifying Han's kill as self-defense. Fans revolted. The change wasn't just cosmetic, it reshaped Han's entire moral arc. Lucas later defended the revision, saying he always intended Han to be good from the start. But the audience remembered differently. They'd already fallen in love with the charming rogue who didn't wait for permission. Today, Han shot first is more than a line. It's a cultural checkpoint, a reminder that even in galaxies far away, character matters more than canon. 10. Jabba the Hutt was originally a human in a furry vest. In the original 1977 cut, Jabba the Hutt didn't appear at all, but Lucas had already shot a scene featuring the slug-like gangster, except Jabba wasn't a slug. He was a human actor in a bulky fur vest, shouting threats in a Scottish accent. The plan was to later replace him with a stop-motion alien in post-production, but the technology wasn't there yet. So Lucas cut the scene entirely, leaving Jabba as an off-screen menace referenced only in dialogue. When the special editions rolled out in 1997, Lucas reinserted the scene, this time overlaying a CGI Jabba on top of the human actor. But here's where it gets weird. They didn't reshoot. Instead, they awkwardly edited Harrison Ford walking behind the original actor, then digitally animated him stepping on Jabba's tail to account for the spacing. The result is janky, forced, and famously unnatural. And yet, it tells a deeper story. Star Wars wasn't built with seamless CGI or airtight logic. It was a patchwork of dreams, drafts, and duct tape. Jabba evolved from a man in fur to a grotesque slug, and in that evolution, you can trace the entire technological arc of modern filmmaking. 11. The whole movie nearly didn't happen because studios thought it was too weird. Star Wars almost died on the vine. Lucas pitched it everywhere, United Artists, Universal, even Disney, and they all said no. Too expensive, too strange, too risky. In an era dominated by gritty realism and post-Watergate cynicism, a space opera with talking robots and sword-wielding monks felt laughable. What changed the tide? American Graffiti. Lucas's coming-of-age film had been a surprise box office smash, turning a tiny budget into millions. That success gave him just enough clout to get a foot in the door at 20th Century Fox. Still, the studio only approved the budget because no one expected much from the film. The crew treated it like a kid's matinee. Many actors thought it was career suicide. Even Alec Guinness, who played Obi-Wan, called the script fairy tale rubbish in letters to friends. But Lucas saw something else. He saw myth. He saw rebellion. He saw possibility. And when the movie finally dropped in 1977, it exploded across culture like a supernova. Star Wars wasn't just made, it escaped. It fought to exist. And that struggle is embedded in every frame, every prop, every line. The Force wasn't given, it was earned. So now you've seen what's under the hood. a bantha played by an elephant, a villain in bedroom slippers, and a galaxy held together with student code and duct tape. You've walked through sandstorms, rewrites, and swing stunts shot on a budget of hope. And you've learned the real truth about A New Hope, that it was never clean, never sleek, never inevitable. It was weird, it was fragile, it was a near disaster, crammed with mistakes that somehow made magic. And maybe that's why it still works, because Star Wars isn't perfect. It's personal, a space fantasy full of golden sweat, technical hacks, and aliens with Scottish accents. So next time you rewatch it, listen closer, not to the Force, but to the seams. That's where the story really lives. That's where the weird makes the myth. And remember, if anyone asks, Han shot first. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you liked the video, and subscribe to our channel to be the first to see our new uploads. Comment if you want to see a part 2. You've seen the snow, you've felt the betrayal, you've heard the scream, "No!" echoing through your spine since childhood. But The Empire Strikes Back isn't just the middle child of a galaxy-spanning trilogy. It's the dark heartbeat, the place where the myth bleeds. You think you know what went into it. Ice planets, Father reveals. Green puppets with backwards grammar. But behind every frame is a strange truth, a weird wrinkle, a decision so wild it could have bent the Force in a different direction. This is not just trivia. This is the cold underside of your nostalgia. Welcome to Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, 1980. 15 mind-blowing facts you didn't know. Let's unfreeze what the Carbonite tried to bury. 1. The opening crawl had to be shot on a giant sheet of paper. Before CGI rolled in like the Empire itself, the now iconic opening crawl was filmed the old-fashioned way, practically. To create that galaxy-tilted yellow text floating into the void, a camera was physically moved over a giant 6-foot-long sheet of glossy paper with the text printed on it, tilted at an angle. It took hours to get just the right movement, and even then, the lighting had to be redone repeatedly to eliminate unwanted reflections. The whole sequence was so fragile that one slip-up meant starting over. It's why that crawl feels so real. It literally is. A tiny camera crawling across text in a dark room, pretending to be light years away from Earth. 2. The Norway blizzard wasn't in the script. When Mark Hamill stumbled through the Hoth snow in the film's opening, you weren't watching special effects. You were watching an actual blizzard in Finse, Norway. The snowstorm was so brutal, the crew couldn't leave the hotel. But director Irvin Kershner didn't waste a crisis. He sent Hamill out into the storm and filmed from inside the lobby. That desolate, windswept footage, completely improvised, a direct gift from Mother Nature's fury. The cold you feel on Luke's cheeks was real, and the sense of isolation wasn't acted, it was experienced. Sometimes, the galaxy doesn't need matte paintings. It just needs snow, wind, and an actor willing to get half frozen in the name of rebellion. 3. The Wampa attack was a fix for Mark Hamill's real-life injury. Ever noticed how Luke's face looks slightly different in Empire? That's because Mark Hamill had been in a car crash before filming, leaving scars the makeup team couldn't entirely conceal. Instead of dodging it, the writers embraced it. The Wampa attack was written into the script specifically to explain Luke's changed appearance. That brutal swipe across the face wasn't just dramatic, it was medical storytelling. Every trickle of blood and breathless scream doubled as cover for reality. It's cinematic sleight of hand. Trauma masking trauma. In a galaxy far, far away, even wild ice beasts serve continuity. And now when you rewatch that scene, you're not just flinching for Luke, you're wincing for Mark. 4. Tauntauns were originally kangaroo lizard hybrids. Before the fluffy snow lizard design you know today, the Tauntauns of Hoth were something weirder, much weirder. Early concept art imagined them as kangaroo lizard hybrids with long ears, upright posture, and reptilian skin. Picture Lucic riding a scaly beast that hops instead of gallops. It wasn't until legendary artist Ralph McQuarrie added thick fur and curling horns that the creature evolved into its iconic form. And even then, stop-motion animator Phil Tippett had to sculpt the Tauntauns by hand, frame by frame, breath cloud by breath cloud. Every gallop across the icy plains is a labor of cold-blooded reinvention. You think they're just space llamas, but deep down, they're evolution's awkward drafts brought to life. 5. The Rebel base interior was shot in a freezing meat locker. Hoth looks cold because it was cold. down to the bones. To capture the icy chill of the Rebel base interiors, the production crew used an actual meat storage facility in Elstree Studios. Temperatures were kept well below freezing to ensure actors' breath remained visible. Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher filmed while shivering in heavy costumes, the walls surrounding them covered in frost, both fake and real. Crew members wore parkas and gloves, camera lenses constantly fogged. It wasn't just method acting, it was method suffering. You can practically hear the crackle of icicles forming between dialogue lines. And in that visible chill, rebellion feels more desperate, more physical, more real than any blue screen could conjure. 6. Harrison Ford's return was never guaranteed. When Empire was being written, Harrison Ford hadn't signed on for a third film. Lucas knew this and used it. That's why Han Solo's arc ends frozen in carbonite. It's both a dramatic cliffhanger and an insurance policy. If Ford walked away, Han could stay trapped forever, mourned by Leia, mythologized by Chewie. Ford himself was hesitant, fearing typecasting, and uncertain whether Star Wars would outlive its hype. So they gambled on ambiguity. That haunting moment, eyes wide, mouth half open, frozen in tragic stasis. It wasn't just character drama. It was real contract limbo. The smuggler's silence is loaded with backstage doubt. You don't just watch Han frozen. You watch the future held hostage, uncertain and chilling. 7. I love you, I know, was an onset mutiny. Leia confesses love. Han answers not with reciprocity, but rebellion. I know. It's a line that lands like a heartbeat skipping, but it wasn't in the script. Harrison Ford found the original response. I love you too. Too saccharine, too un-Han. On set, he and director Irvin Kershner experimented, tweaking line after line until Ford dropped that now famous bomb, I know, a phrase soaked in arrogance, fear, and tenderness. Test screenings went wild. In just 2 words, Solo went from scoundrel to tragic hero. And Leia's face, Carrie Fisher's heartbreak stung with truth, sells it. What feels like the perfect beat of a screenplay was, in fact, a last-minute insurrection. Sometimes the galaxy turns on 2 unscripted syllables. 8. Yoda was almost played by a trained monkey before settling on Frank Oz's now legendary puppet performance. The studio seriously considered using a trained monkey in a Yoda costume. Footage exists. The monkey wore a cane and mask while handlers tried to direct him, but every attempt failed. He kept ripping off the mask and flinging it across the set. Eventually, the absurdity became undeniable. George Lucas scrapped the idea, turning instead to puppetry. Enter Frank Oz, who imbued the tiny creature with Shakespearean wisdom and offbeat cadence. Yoda's voice, his hands, his gaze, all came from Oz's meticulous work in Dagobah's swampy shadows. So remember, the most philosophical figure in Star Wars was one thrown banana peel away from being literal monkey business. 9. Yoda's eyes were modeled. After Albert Einstein, Frank Oz and the Creature Shop didn't want Yoda to just look alien. They wanted him to feel wise, so they borrowed that wisdom. Literally, Yoda's eyes were modeled after Albert Einstein's. The heavy lids, the slightly melancholy stare, the twitch of contemplation, it's all Einstein, transposed onto a wrinkled green mystic. When Yoda speaks, you don't just hear cryptic Jedi advice, you see the reflections of 1,000 theoretical equations. The design blended ancient and modern, puppet and physicist, to create someone who feels outside time. And it worked. When you lock eyes with Yoda, you feel the weight of galaxies, not just from the Force, but from relativity itself, tucked into a foam latex shell. 10. Luke's backpack actually contained Frank Oz. When you watch Luke training on Dagobah, jogging and flipping with Yoda on his back, it looks like clever puppetry. But there's a stranger truth. Sometimes Yoda wasn't a puppet. He was Frank Oz, curled up inside Mark Hamill's backpack. Oz operated Yoda live through hidden controls or direct manipulation, crouching for long hours in a custom compartment built into the set and into Luke's gear. The swamp scenes were so complex, they demanded contortionist-level commitment from everyone, especially Oz. The weight Luke carries becomes real, in both senses. He's not just shouldering a Jedi Master's wisdom, he's literally carrying the man giving Yoda life. The metaphor became physical, the burden became shared. 11. The swamp was built on a giant waterbed. Dagobah wasn't a real swamp. It was a stage set built inside Elstree Studios, and it had a secret. Beneath all that muck, moss, and fog lay a massive waterbed-like bladder to simulate swampy ground. Walk on it, and the set would subtly bounce, shift, and ripple, selling the illusion that Luke was ankle-deep in living terrain. It made every step uncertain, every move feel like a negotiation with nature. And when Luke's X-Wing sinks into the bog, the illusion is perfect. The ship disappears into what feels like breathing Earth. The Jedi don't just train in discomfort, they train in synthetic instability. Dagobah's lessons aren't about balance, they're about letting go of solid ground. 12. David Prowse never knew the truth about Vader. Darth Vader's reveal, "I am your father," is arguably the most famous twist in film history. But the man in the suit, David Prowse, didn't know it. During filming, he was given fake lines. "Obi-Wan killed your father." Only a handful of people knew the real twist. George Lucas, Mark Hamill, Irvin Kershner, and James Earl Jones, who voiced the line later in post-production. Prowse performed the scene with conviction, completely unaware his dialogue would be replaced. That blank look on Luke's face? Real confusion. Hamill had to act the gut punch without reacting too early. So the most explosive moment in sci-fi history. It was an inside job, even among the cast. Secrets are the Empire's currency. 13. The carbonite chamber was lit like a horror movie. The carbon freezing chamber where Han meets his frozen fate wasn't just designed, it was lit like a gothic nightmare. Cinematographer Peter Suschitzky used a blend of deep reds, icy blues, and intense shadows to make the space feel mythic, almost infernal. It wasn't meant to be just science fiction, it was opera. The vertical steam bursts, the blinding spotlight from above. It all evokes sacrificial ritual. In that chamber, heroes descend into hell, and when Han is lowered, surrounded by silence and red glow, you feel like you're watching a soul being stolen. It's not just a freeze, it's a death. And then, the heartbreak of survival. A smuggler turned relic, bathed in cinematic blood. 14. Boba Fett's voice was nearly British. When Boba Fett made his full theatrical debut in Empire, his armor was already iconic. But his voice, that wasn't locked in. The original voice actor was Jason Wingreen, who gave Fett a gruff, Western-style menace, a perfect match for the bounty hunter's loner mystique. But in early international cuts, some versions featured a British accent, far posher than the hardened drifter we know. Later, after the prequels, George Lucas replaced Wingreen's voice with Temuera Morrison's to match Jango Fett. But the idea of Boba Fett sipping tea between captures isn't just hilarious. It shows how the galaxy's most feared man could have sounded like an Imperial desk clerk. Thankfully, the menace survived. Barely. 15. The ending was reshot to soften the despair. Originally, The Empire Strikes Back ended on a bleaker note. Luke loses his hand, Han is gone, the rebels are scattered. The final shot had Leia and Luke simply staring into space. No hopeful music, no parting glance. It felt like a fall without recovery. Test audiences found it too heavy, so Lucas ordered a quick reshoot. The new ending added a medical ship, Chewie prepping for rescue, and that bittersweet John Williams score swelling like a scarred sunrise. The scene was filmed after most crew had packed up, using repurposed sets and rushed lighting. That sliver of hope, tiny, flickering, but crucial, was a late gift. Without it, the saga might have ended in shadow. And now, you know, the giant crawl wasn't CG. The snow was real. The wisdom came from Einstein's eyes. Yoda could have been a monkey. Han's love line was an act of rebellion. And the ending you remember was a second draft mercy. The Empire Strikes Back is often called the best Star Wars film. But it's more than that. It's a miracle of improvised storms, secret rewrites, emotional accidents, and sheer puppet grit. It didn't just deepen the galaxy, it nearly tore it apart to do so. So next time the Falcon lifts off, remember the swamp waterbed, remember the pig lungs, remember that the strangest truths often power the most timeless myths. Stay weird, stay hopeful, and never tell a Wookiee the odds.